It is the 200 level, Mike Carpenter in the basement studio with a kind of impromptu podcast. I knew that me and this guy were going to try to get one before the season. And then I checked my email this morning. It's like, well, shoot, let's do it. So Jeremy Werner is on the program a mere 6 days before the 2025 season kicks off. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Sick of training camp at this point. We're not getting to see much at this point, and I feel like we've learned as much as we're going to learn. So we're at that point now where it's just like, all right, let's play some games. And Western Illinois, we all know, is a bye game. Illinois should blow that one out. So how much are we actually going to learn? I don't know, but at least we'll start to see these guys. But really, it's just kind of a march towards the Duke game for me, because that's when we will learn a lot. And just going through my season prediction, which I just published, Carp. I've kind of been going back and forth on how I do this. The first 5 weeks, we're going to know so much about this team, because while the schedule, especially the back end, is phenomenal, we're going to learn a lot with Duke, Indiana, USC, all right there in a month-long span. So just kind of getting ready for that, because that'll tell us where the season is going. And it's fun, man, to have these expectations. People are excited about Illinois football. They're consuming the Illinois football content, and it doesn't feel like it's the stay relevant, the Operation Relevancy, like we used to do back in the 2010s.
Every fall around, probably, I don't know, second, third week of October, that mission would be an abject failure. Yeah. No longer, which is nice. I mean, you said that you published your season preview, and I'm glad you brought up the first 5 weeks, because it's good news, bad news. The bad news is that if you have any sort of struggles out of the gate, then any lofty talks about the college football playoff are probably put on hold. Though, fortunately for Illinois, I think that Ohio State game looms large, can probably pick you up from an early season misstep somewhere. But I was thinking to myself that the beauty of the schedule and the way it sets up is you could enter the month of October penciled into the college football playoff, at least mentally speaking, because of how the schedule lightens up a bit on the back end. But as you look at those first 5 games, I sort of view the Duke, Indiana, USC, those 3-game stretch as a telltale sign of what kind of season we're probably going to have in terms of will it be merely good or potentially great. And we'll dig into your predictions and everything with it. But even as I look at those, the Illini fan of seasons past would be leery of that stretch. But I think there's really good arguments to make that Illinois could potentially win all 3 of them by just not stepping in it. So what a world to be in, where I saw that number 12 ranking come across not once but twice in the Coaches Then AP poll, and I said, yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah, no, it did. I think this team deserved to be in the teens somewhere, just based on who they return, what they have. And for me, the coaching staff, I think, plays a big role in that as well. You said they could win all 3 of those games. I agree with that. I also think there's a chance that you can lose all 3 of those. Like, I am not at this point with this roster, I'm not sitting there going like, yep, no doubt 4th or 5th most talented roster in the Big Ten. I'm not there with this team. I do think it's an experienced one. I think, Carp, what makes me so excited about when you get to November, like we saw last year, is the depth is far better. And that's where I think they have an advantage over some of the programs they'll be playing then. Northwestern, Maryland, even Washington, which is a team I'm very leery of going into the year. But some of those games, like, I just feel like you have an advantage in so many different ways, not just your quarterback, not just your offensive line, but coaching staff, depth, all those things. But USC's got plenty of talent. Indiana's really talented, and they're deep. And that's a game I go into, and I don't go, yeah, Illinois' got the coaching advantage for sure in that one. Like, Indiana's a really, really well-coached staff. And then Duke is an early game in the season. It's the first test for both of them. It's a road game. Indiana's a road game. So that's where it gets difficult with this team, and why I've kind of continually gone back towards that 8.5 number. I would not bet on. Mm-hmm. I would not bet on that number. 7.5, I would have maybe bet the over on that, but 8.5 feels pretty rich for me to where I wouldn't touch that, because it's really hard to win Big Ten games, and Illinois, whether it was earned, and I think a lot of it was, but some of it, you think of the Purdue game. I mean, Luke Altmaier fumbled. If that is called a fumble, they lose that game. How much does that change how we think about this season going into it? Yeah. If Greg Schiano doesn't call a timeout on that field goal, Illinois loses that game. And all of a sudden, Maybe they're 7-5 to end that regular season. How much are we talking different about that team? So that's where I don't want to get it caught into. They won 10 games and they deserve to win 10 games, but it also could have easily been 7 or 8 by the end of it if just certain little things would have gone wrong. But I do think clutch is, a skill. Luke Altmaier is a big advantage. And I think you're going to get the best version of him this year. I think Aaron Henry showed great improvement, but I do think you're going to get a lot of close games, Carp. I do think they'll blow out some of the more bottom of the Big Ten teams better than they did last year. But I do think the games we're talking about, especially those first 5, those 3 games we're talking about, I think they're all going to be close games.
Yeah, it's funny how the schedule came out and the initial reaction from a lot of Illini fans is, well, I mean, look at this. It's much easier than last year. And I don't know how much of a discrepancy there is because it's always tricky to make predictions before a season starts. Little did we know, even with the coaching change and a lack of a quarterback, that Michigan would essentially be a borderline top 25 team last year when you faced them after winning a national title. So I think the thing that hardens me the most, though, and I was talking to Trevor about this, how even if last year's team, let's say, had finished the season with a loss at Rutgers, which I think that was the miracle win, and that's okay. Illinois has been so short on those that I'm not feeling guilty for taking one every so often. But let's say they don't win that. Well, they still probably beat Northwestern. They go to the Citrus Bowl as an 8-4 team. All I'm trying to get at is I think last year's team, take the luck out. You play that season 10 times. I think 8 wins is probably the result they get most of the time. And I think that had they only won 8 games last year, I still would be entering this season with the same amount of expectations. Point being that the Citrus Bowl result, to me, did not inflate expectations that much. Certainly made me feel good at the time and makes me feel like maybe this team could take a next step. But I would agree that, the talent level by itself does not scream elite, but I still would have probably slotted them in that top 15 role based on other factors like who's coming back and the coaching staff.
Yeah, and the schedule. I mean, you mentioned it. Michigan, we thought coming into last year was still going to be like a 9+ win team, right? And then you have Penn State and Oregon, who we knew were elite. Illinois only got one of those opponents. Indiana's more in their realm. Indiana's got some question marks, but they should be pretty good. Otherwise, in the Big Ten, I think USC is going to be tougher, but it's at home. I like it being at home. But yeah, when it comes to this team, I think this year's team is better than last year's team. I just don't think that means they're going to get the same record or same 10 wins, right? It's a different season, different things happen. But I do think there are reasons for that optimism. And I do think the South Carolina game is a reason for optimism, Carp, because that South Carolina team was pretty whole at that point. You were without Pat Bryant. They were without their star running back. Nikki Manwari only played one half and then decided to quit in the game. Yeah. But that was Lenore Sellers. That was offensive line, defensive line was legit, and Illinois played extremely well. The offensive line was really clicking late in the season. We know Luke Altmaier was clicking late last season. The secondary, I thought, was studly late in the year, and I thought Matthew Bailey's emergence was huge with that. Gabe Akis took over some games last year. The difference is, you lose a wide receiver in Pat Bryant, who had one of the best seasons we've ever seen from an Illinois wide receiver. Do you have a guy that's going to make those kind of plays, or do you have the running game improvement to make up for losing a guy like that? So there is plenty of reasons for optimism. I feel like I am optimistic about this team with my season prediction, but I do think there's reason to think it's hard. It's really hard to back up a 10-win season with another 9+ win season. Illinois has never done it, Carp. They've never won 9+ games in back-to-back years. But if somebody's going to do it, I do think it's Bret Bielema, and I do think it's with this team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, it's weird. Usually I'm the one that back in the radio days and through now will be asking Illini fans to demand more, expect more. But I'm kind of taking the opposite approach with this season in that don't let good come as a disappointment.
Don't let the enemy of great. I hear Brad Underwood do that, say that a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Because sometimes I feel like last year and just the way everything went makes you think it's easier, right? Makes you think, even going 7-1 to start the 2022 season. I just said, they can do that again. And you realize other teams get better. You can get worse in certain areas. And that's just, the games might fall a different way when you play this many close games. So I would consider 8+ wins a success for Illinois. Other people are going to disagree with me. I think a failure would be, 6 is not a failure for Illinois' history, but that would be a failure for this team. It's not taking advantage of what you have. But I do think there are reasons to think you can make a college football playoff, but I don't think that's the only realm of success for Illinois football, given what Bret Bielema was brought here to do. If you have another 8+ win season or making a good bowl game, producing NFL players, Carp, then you stack them and stack them and stack them, and then you're Iowa or Wisconsin.
Excellent. Well, if it's okay with you, I'm going to hit up the sponsors real quick. You're right back to you here as we get into the season preview with Jeremy Werner, which, of course, you can listen to the Jeremy Werner Illini Inquirer podcast. I was about to say Jeremy Werner show, but that's long since gone. Illini Inquirer podcast with Joey Wagner and a new face that I'll talk to Jeremy about here in a bit. But real quick, the 200 Levels brought to you by Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Steak, seafood, and spirits in the heart of downtown Champaign for a formal or informal dinner, pre-game, date night, whatever it may be. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters. You name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call today and schedule that fall furnace check at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC. Online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote at owenbuildersllc.com. All right. Let's talk, Jeremy, about real quick. Oh, geez, sorry. This is me on StreamYard right now. We're live without a net, and I'm just kind of working my way through this. You use StreamYard, don't you?
Yeah, fantastic. I love it.
Sick. This is what you do when you have summer vacation and you.
I like your little border here. It's
A+
level stuff here, Carp.
Canva. You ever use it for graphic design?
I've downloaded Canva. I have not figured out how to use it. I'm gonna rely on some young kid to figure that out for me.
It's fun. It's fun. Tell me real quick. So before we get to the Illini football thing, there's two brief things I wanted to talk about regarding the Illini sports media. First, about our good friend Lante, who is retiring, if not full-time, at least from a large extent of it, with his 15-year run at 93.5. And, listen, there are so many good media people following the Illini beat. There's only one Lante. And through all the years, you guys set the foundation there for an 8-year run, 7-year run.
7 years. It felt longer than that, but
in a good way.
A good way, yeah. We were 7-8 years together, I believe. Yeah, somewhere in there.
And to me, and I was texting with Trevor about it and Isaac about it. There is a bit of sadness in much the same way when Dan Bernstein kind of put his foot in his mouth, but he's back with a podcast, but we're losing a voice that I valued, and I know a lot of Illini fans valued, and knowing him only kind of makes it a little bit more, that's a bummer, though I know he's making the decision for himself.
Yeah. When Lon recorded the podcast with me, he told me I couldn't tell anybody, but he had a good idea that was going to happen. So that's why I didn't ask him about it, because he asked me not to. And in that moment, I felt happy for Lon, because he's had such a great run. But I know following Andrew and his baseball career at the college level was very important to him. Plus, I feel like he's accomplished what he needs to accomplish. And I think he was getting towards the end here anyway. And then Derek leaving, I think it was just a clean break for him. But he can speak on that. I think you're going to have him on here at some point.
Yeah, Monday.
Lon changed my life. I tweeted about it the other day. Stevie called me up out of the blue. Never had talked with Stevie J ever. And he called me up and offered me a job when I had just accepted a job up at DeKalb covering Northern Illinois football and basketball just a few months earlier. And I was really hesitant to leave a job that quickly. I just didn't like that. I didn't want to be a job hopper. There's a lot of unknown about, what this could be. I actually had Stevie write me a promissory note, like, I will pay a full year salary if you don't, if this doesn't work out, because there was a chance, Carp. It didn't work out. But I did want to get back to the Illinois beat at some point, and I just didn't know if the traditional way of getting through the newspaper would work for me. I was hoping it would, but just didn't seem like that door was open. And I was going back and forth, and then Lon called me, and he said, Stevie J told me not to call you, not to push you, and I don't want to push you, but I just want to talk to you because I feel like I would regret it if I don't. And Rob Judson, of all people, who I had never met, was the one who suggested me to Stevie. He must have read some of my stuff in the News Gazette. But long story short, an hour and a half into our conversation, I was kind of sold on this. And Lon talked for about an hour and 10 or 15 minutes.
So, yeah, that tracks.
It's like, okay, this guy kind of, he's got the personality, he's got the voice, but he just what he does with everybody, he just put me at ease. Carp, like, when you get into a conversation with Lon, it can be the first time you met him. It can be the 1,000th time you've met him. He just puts you at ease. It is easy with Lante to have conversation. And I thought, if I got that guy, I can do my thing, which is be a reporter, work hard, set up the guests, set up all this stuff. But I have somebody that's a talented talker and makes me feel at ease. I've never done radio. I've never led a radio show. Lon hadn't either, but he at least on the TV thing, he just had the personality to do it. He changed my life there. It brought me back to Champaign and created this journey that I've had in the Illinois media. And then the only reason I parted ways with him was just because I had a family and I just didn't have enough time around them doing a 3-hour radio show. And Carp, I drove an hour there, hour back every day with my family. And it just got to the point where I wasn't with my son enough. And I knew we wanted to have another kid. So I was prepared to leave, and Stevie was kind enough to let me do my own morning show. And that continued through COVID. But I tell people all the time, I don't miss doing the radio show because I get enough of it through here and podcasts and everything. But I miss talking to Lon every day.
Yep.
Every time I do talk to Lon, whether it's seeing him at the NCAA championships for golf, we chatted for like 45 minutes. Or the other day when we had him on the podcast, it's just so easy. It's so easy with him. And he's my brother for life. And you said it, like, we did something different. We did something different on that radio show. It continued with you and Lon, continued with Derek and Lon. But Lon was the through point of it all. A 15-year run with several different co-hosts. I would like to know his participation percentage on that, Carp. What do you think? Did he make 70% of shows?
That's actually a really good question. That's why it's like, for those that think, man, he's leaving radio, it's like, well, like he always kind of had his nice,
three-fifths job for him. But no, it was got to give him some crap somewhere. But no, it was he had a hell of a run, and I always tried to be the guy who brought the information, that brought like the hardcore sports fan. Lon was the guy that made it entertaining. Like I tried to give you some information through it. Derek brought that, and I think you need that. But the reason it worked is because Lon was somebody's buddy sitting at the bar stool next to him. That's why that dynamic always worked. And it's something I'm always jealous I don't have that Lon has. Like I can get along with people, and I can strike up conversation and be good with that, but it's not to a Lante level, man.
Well, and that being said, few can reach the Lante level, but I think that for 15 years, Illini fans and radio listeners in the area, they got kind of a slice of what you would get from a larger market. And much of that was thanks to Lon, but obviously the not contributions, but the fact that you and Lon started that thing. And really what's so cool is to think about all the faces that walked through those doors as interns. I mean, I don't know if you remember intern Trish, who was literally the Miami Heat TV reporter in Miami South Beach.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just one of so many people that have went on to do things in sports media that were UIUC kids that would come in, and it was so cool to be a part of something where everybody kind of, they wanted to do something good and something unique. And I think the other cool thing is that they loved radio. Like, in other words, they really took pride in doing something with those 2 or 3 hours that you were not getting otherwise in Champaign-Urbana. So as a townie, it also saddens me that brand of talk radio is, the Lante brand for sure is gone. Now, there'll be other avenues, and I know he's not going to go silent. But another one this summer, your guy Derek, who him and Lon had a great show, and Derek, as far as having his finger on the pulse of Illini basketball from the doldrums of the John Gross era now to these heights that we've reached under Brad Underwood. You do have a new face, fresh from UIUC, who's got a lot of potential. And I listened to your guys' pod, and he sounds great. But tell us about kind of that transition over the summer.
Yeah, so we were at a point, and Derek and I have always, been in constant contact, but we started this thing, man, from nothing. And it was like, I went back to figure out when it was 2015. I thought it was 2016 for the longest time, but it was 2015 at the time. So that was a 9-10 year run that we had together starting this. And, I couldn't pay Derek hardly anything. It was a part-time gig when he started it, but he started coming on with T&J, and I really liked him and thought he had some potential, and he really got after it, and he had good relationships at the time with all those Illinois basketball recruits. So he let me hit the ground running because I couldn't do it all by myself. And to watch him grow as a writer, as a reporter, was fantastic. I always thought you'd count on Derek, not only for the recruiting information, but I just thought as a columnist and as an analyst, I thought he really grew that he could tell you it straight. Like he would be fair, all that, but he would tell you if there were issues with the team. And he wasn't afraid to write it or to say it. So I was proud to see that. And of course, it's awesome to see him like after I become a father, him become a father and a husband, and see him go through all of that in the last 4 or 5 years for him. So that was a lot of fun. But we were talking about what the future would be, and he decided to go a different route, which was a little surprising at the time. But I was so happy for him, Carp, because the one thing people don't understand about this job, and I'm not complaining about it because I get it. I love this job, but you are always on. You are always on. That phone is always on you, and you have late nights. I get home, go to sleep 3 or 4 o'clock after some basketball and football games. You got to wake up the next day to take care of your kids and send them off to school and all of that. And you miss a lot of things. I miss some birthday parties, not of my kids, but of other people. I miss family events. We have to schedule our vacations around me to the point where my family has to, do some vacations without me. So you got to sacrifice some of that. And I give a lot of credit to Derek saying, I don't want to sacrifice those things anymore. It didn't matter to him how many Twitter followers he had or all of that. And nowadays, Carp, that's pretty refreshing.
Yeah.
That somebody does that, because a lot of people, that's all they care about. So I completely understood, could never be mad at him for that. Of course, I have to pivot right away, right? And figure out where I want to go with the future. So I was really happy to lock down Joey Wagner for a couple of years and to add some talent. And Derek gets a huge assist on Kyle Tosk, who is a very, very talented kid. We were in our group chat the other day, and he does remind me of a young Isaac Trotter a lot, just the way he can talk sports. He knows ball. He's really driven. He's really ambitious. I am not expecting Kyle to replace Derek Piper. Derek Piper was the number one person on the Illinois basketball beat. He had built those ties for 10, 12 years. So it has been a group effort. I'm taking over some more of the basketball stuff. I think people have seen that, and Joey's helping me with that. But Kyle will hit the ground running now. He's still a senior at U of I, but I think he's got a really, really bright future. So happy to bring him on board and hopefully give everybody the coverage. But on the podcast with Derek, I was happy that we could share all those memories and kind of give him his send off, because he's been awesome. The Illini Inquirer is not what it is without Derek Piper. We will miss him, and we stay in constant contact in our group chat and everything. So he's doing well, and he sounds like he's enjoying the new life.
Excellent. I remember talking with Steve Breitweiser one time, and he mentioned why he got out of it. And he talked about, there's the exhilarating part of the travel and the late nights. And when the teams are good, especially, it's that much more exciting to do. But then he says, man, one day I just kind of woke up and I was listening to whatever coach he was covering. And he's like, I heard that answer before, many times before. And it was 11:30 at night. And I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm pivoting here and using that to ask you this question, because you've often said this. As a journalist, you have to be objective, but you've made no bones about it that it is more fun for you when Illinois is good. For sure. So entering this training camp, this is different than even 2023, because you lost a lot of guys like a Chase Brown and a Tommy DeVito and all the secondary that are all in the NFL right now. But what has it been like to enter this training camp and feel as if you're covering a legit college football program, the likes of which we haven't had around here since what? Makovic is the name that always comes up.
Yeah, and I wasn't even aware of Illini football when I was 3 years old, and that was happening.
I wasn't here, and I wasn't either. So,
and now I got a bald head, so it tells you how long it has been since that has been true. Steve Breitweiser, I totally get that. There's a lot of burnout in this industry, by the way, because of that, because of everything that goes into it. I just want to say I am not even near that. I freaking love this job. I love doing it. I love what we've built, and it doesn't feel like work half the time. There are just some parts that are, make it a little harder, especially on my family, that I have to be aware about, and that's why you try to hire people who can really help you do all those things. But yeah, Carpet, it's reminiscent of 21, 22 Illinois basketball, right? Where it's like, oh, now there are expectations. How do they deal with them? And 2021 was weird because of the COVID year, but they handled those incredibly well until the NCAA tournament, right? So that's the question with this team now is I don't question whether this is a stable program, whether it's a good program, whether it's a bowl program. I think they've shown over the last 3 years, and I include 23 in that, going 5-7 and having some issues, but still finding a way to be competitive like week in and week out. I think this is a good program. Like the last 3 years, it's, I think, 5th or 6th in wins in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So it has proven itself as a good program. Now it's, can you turn good to great? Can you take advantage of those special years? And can this be one of those special years? Because that's what Iowa and Wisconsin did. And I know I'm bringing up those programs, but even a Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio, it's year after year. You know you're going to a bowl. You hope you get to 8 or 9 wins. Like that's almost a standard kind of 8-9 wins. Yeah, that's what we do. But then those 1 every 5 or 1 every 6 years, you can have a special year, 10 wins, 11 wins, whatever it is, and find yourself in a great bowl game. Back then it was the Rose Bowl. Now, can you make the college football playoff? Like, I don't think everyone's expecting Illinois to make the college football playoff every year. They probably won't do it next year, guys, with all the stuff they have to replace. But next year, you kind of go in, hey, just make a bowl, keep this thing going, right? But if you can take advantage of what you have with 16 of 22 starters returning, I make this point, Carp, one of the biggest things, almost their entire 2 deep is returning. That's what, like, the fact that you get guys back like Sabor Kareem, Malik Elzy, and guys who could go elsewhere and no doubt be starters, guys that have to fight for jobs to get on the field this year, like, that's a positive. That says these people want to stay around and get developed by you. Like, that's really impressive. Matt Krasedic, I would throw into that. He could be starting on a lot of Big Ten teams. He's your third safety. Those are huge to keep in your program, to continue to build, and not be Wisconsin where it's like one guy leaves, one guy comes in, one guy leaves, one guy comes in of the same caliber. Illinois feels like it's building somewhere. And that's why this season is so important, Carp. This season is all about, to me, sustaining success and seeing if you can make the most of what I think is the deepest roster this program has had probably since, 3, 4, 5 years into Ron Zook, right? Like,
Yeah.
And that team probably had more top end talent, but this team might have more depth, like, just because you're not losing guys.
The retention rate of these players is maybe the most remarkable thing. That Bielema comes in 2021, or I guess late December 2020 he's hired, but 21 his first season. And this is right as the NIL era is really kicking off. And the transfer portal is just really starting to turn into a thing, and now it's just everywhere. And it's something that for most programs you got to be thinking about. And yet somehow as an Illini fan, when you were so used to the rug getting pulled out from under you, it's been kind of the opposite under Bielema. We enter transfer portal season, and like a Josh McCray is more like, whoa, that's kind of unusual. Now, I guess the question I have for you, and it's tricky because you guys get access to the coaches and the players after practice, and you've seen maybe a practice and a half or something like that this training camp. But what is it about Bret Bielema as a coach, or personality, or both, that you think has led to this culture being what it is, where a guy like a Matt Krasedic is totally fine waiting his turn, whereas that's just not the norm for a lot of college athletes, understandably?
One, he's completely honest with players. Like they have honest conversations about what their role is, what they need to do, why this is the best place to succeed for him, or why it's not, why somebody should leave. Like, he has those conversations, and I think he kind of runs it like a professional franchise a little bit in that way, not cutthroat. But the other part is the journalist in me sees this family thing, family ILLY. It seems a little cheesy.
Yeah, sure. My wife makes fun of it, and I'm like, I get it, but they're winning games, so I don't hate it.
Sure. You better win games when you're saying stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, and I say this to recruits. I go, I know it sounds cheesy, and they'll say, I know it sounds cheesy, but they feel it. They feel it when they get on campus, and it's because they bring the families in here. They really get to know the kids. They really get to know their families. So I think they know that there's a level of investment in them. That doesn't mean that you won't lose the first recruit Bret Bielema ever brought in here, Josh McCray, because he's the third running back here after the year he had. And, the SEC wants me, and he's probably getting a good paycheck. Like, of course, you're still going to lose some guys. And Bret Bielema is understanding of that, he's had great continuity, and that might not always be the case the further and further we get in this pay for play era. But the other thing is, when you produce, you're going to get rewarded. At Illinois, they're not giving a ton of big contracts out. Like, of course, James Thompson and, Hudson Clement, and those guys are going to be making some money when they come here. Luke Altmaier when he comes in here. But the guys who make the most money on the team are the guys who have performed at the highest level. So I do think they see it as a meritocracy. And then, Carp, the other part is they see NFL players coming through this program.
A lot.
And that's all these guys care about. Like, for the most part, I guess they want to win. They want to be part of this. They want to learn. They want to grow. And part of that is Bret Bielema doing all those things. But the number one thing guys that come to college football want to do, they want to go to NFL because they're going to make millions of dollars when they get to the NFL. And they're seeing guys like Tip Ryman make the NFL. They're seeing these DBs who are no stars or 3 stars get to the NFL, get developed. And now you see quarterbacks like Tommy DeVito and Luke Altmaier come in here and able to get to the NFL at some point. So that's the biggest thing is you're winning games. These players are getting better and they're getting to the NFL. They buy into that. You know, I talked with Sabor Kareem a week ago, and I was saying, you know, a lot of guys in your realm might leave. What is it that keeps you here? He goes, I just have to look at Matt Bailey. If Matt Bailey would have left because Sidney Brown was in front of him, look what he would have missed. You know, you go somewhere else, you don't know what you're going to get. Here, you know what you're going to get. It's not guaranteed that you will get to where you want to go, but the path is written. It's all right there. So it's up to me to go get it. So that's what you'd call culture. That's what you'd call. But for me, it's a coaching staff that communicate extremely well and develop extremely well. I think this is one of the best staffs in the Big Ten, you know, front to top, bottom. And when you can keep your coaches too, Carp, you got an offense coordinator for a 4th year. He's the longest tenured offense coordinator in the Big Ten. I don't think Illinois has ever had that. As long as I can remember. Defensive coordinator is here for a 3rd year, and he seems to be improving. But then your assistant coaches are really good. I think the world of Archie McDaniel, Terrence Jamison, Justin Stepp, Thad Ward. These are all really, really good coaches. And then you have some young guys like Art Sikowski and Trent Harris who are pretty exciting as well.
I think a Lance Leipold would have had some success here too. You know, and I know Kansas stepped back last year, but as a program like Illinois, they're going to have those 5-win years when maybe they shouldn't.
Well, it reminded me a lot, by the way. Sorry to go off track.
Oh, yeah.
I think Adam Kotelnicki is one of the best offense coordinators in the country, maybe because of what I saw him do at Kansas to Illinois, but watching them the rest of the year, I just think he's one of the best. And what he did with Penn State without receivers last year was insane. I think Kansas was dealing with what Illinois did when it lost Ryan Walters. Because no matter what happened with Ryan Walters at Purdue, he's a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And I think, you know, Kansas was dealing with that with Kotelnicki. So that brain drain, you got to be able to replace it. And sometimes that's hard. And it's another reason I'm high on this team, but I interrupted you.
Well, yeah. And I think long-term too, that works out in Bielema's benefit because Lunny's not here. He's not a lifetime offensive coordinator here. He will get an opportunity sometime, someplace. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is because, you know, when Kansas goes and wins, I think 9 games in 23, when we win 5. And I'm already dreading the return game back at Memorial Stadium thinking, oh, my God, now we're going to really get it in our face that we should have hired this guy. Like those thoughts are hard to shake as an Illini fan. I think the intangible factors of Bielema that work here in a way that Leipold would not have. Even, let's say Leipold goes 10-3 and goes to the Citrus Bowl. We love the guy as a coach. I think there is something about Bielema's personality and the chip on his shoulder that he is happy to wear and announce to the world. And the T, I mean, I'm telling you, Jeremy, and you were in the press box, but you could feel, you've been to bowl games. That late 3rd quarter and 4th quarter of the Citrus Bowl.
He taunted him, Carp. He taunted him.
Was it not electric? Did it not send a chill down your spine a little bit?
And I've said this many times, so sorry for repeating myself. But if Bielema does what Hayden Fry did, what Barry Alvarez did, what Bill Snyder did, there's no doubt the statue of Bret Bielema is the T-bar. Like there is no doubt. Because for me, Carp, that was Bret Bielema saying to Illinois fans and maybe to his own team, I know that's an SEC team. I know that's a college football playoff team deservingly, right? Like South Carolina had a real case for the college football playoff, but I ain't afraid of them and we shouldn't be. And we can stand up to them and we can be good enough. We are good enough to beat them. To me, that was Bret Bielema saying that. And I do think there is one of my concerns with Bret Bielema coming in is one, he's been out of the game when he came here. It didn't go well at the end for Arkansas, but you look back and he actually did okay with Arkansas, especially in that division that he was saying. But there's also like this braggadocious, sometimes immature part of Bielema. And I think he would tell you, and Josh Whitman will tell you, he's matured ever since then, and having kids will do that to anybody. But he still brings some of that cocksuredness that Illinois needs. Illinois football needed some of that. Brad Underwood brought it back to Illinois basketball. And you can pick apart things about Brad. You can pick apart things about Bret. But that attitude, Illinois needed an infusion of that after what was the 2010s, when any kind of confidence was lost to this program. So I do think that personality, that confidence, and now Carp, like, it's obviously proving out on the field, and you're getting the best version of CEO Bret Bielema to build the roster. And I think he's made some adjustments with the transfer portal and the NIL and all that. But now you have a coach who's like a spokesman for the Big Ten.
Yes.
Illinois does, because of his history and now what he's doing with Illinois. And that's invaluable when you got a basketball coach, a football coach, and an AD that all are like spokesmen for the Big Ten. That's kind of insane to think where it was 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Think of the brand. Illinois is a brand. And I was even talking to my wife about this because at her job at the U of I, they have to work with the graphics a little bit. I'm like, even that, like, we look cooler. We don't look like, as Stephen Bardo once so famously put it on you and Lon's show, the University of East Central Illinois. And I grew up with the University of East Central Illinois vibes. I was a fan and I was local. So, of course, I was going to root and love these teams. But it felt like, well, what would be the appeal if you weren't someone born in Champaign-Urbana to want to root for them unless they had massive success on the court or on the field? With these personalities in both revenue sports, and I'm going to throw Shauna Green out there, who's just cool and a hell of a coach. So now you got your three biggest faces of the athletic program and the guy at the top who, I don't know how long he is for here before he becomes the head of the NCAA or something.
I think he'll see this through. I think he's going to see Bielema and Underwood through. That's my read. I don't know that for sure, but I think he wants to see this through. Like, and I think he's got several years left on his contract. I think, and the other part is the Big Ten commissioner is relatively new. The NCAA president is relatively new. So I could see him being the football czar if they ever got one of those, and be nice to have one of those so we can all make decisions together. But I think he'll be here for a while. But yeah, like, the thing I think that sticks out to all of me, especially of those top three, Whitman, this job means the world to him, right? This is a legacy job for him, even if he goes on to bigger things. Bret Bielema, this was his chance to have that legacy job, like Hayden Fry did, like Barry Alvarez did. To be the guy who brings sustained success to Illinois football, awakens the sleeping giant, that's what he'd be known for, not being the guy after the guy at Wisconsin, right? Or the guy who failed at Arkansas. And for Brad Underwood, a former JUCO coach, become one of the best coaches in the country at Illinois and lead the renaissance of Illinois basketball, like, that's a pretty damn good legacy for a guy who got a very late start as a Division I head coach.
It's something that when Paul Kowalczyk said not ideal, I never could have envisioned we'd be here 10 years later, because that was 2015 up at Soldier Field, or maybe it was the day after, no, the day before the Soldier Field Northwestern game, that he said, well, we're probably going to keep him. Okay, fine. And that, him being Bill Cubitt. But
it's part of the reason why, like you say, hey, don't be satisfied. And I think all these coaches would say the same thing. Don't be satisfied. Keep pushing up the expectations. At the same time, what you and I went through when we started in this media business reminds me that making NCAA tournaments and losing in the second round, or 8 wins or 9 wins this year, it could be a hell of a lot worse. That's not a bad place to be. That is relevant. That is knocking on the doorstep of great things. You just need to keep getting there so that you can have those phenomenal seasons like we saw a couple years ago with basketball.
If it's okay with you, I want to hit each unit real quick, offense, defense, and then dig into the schedule a little bit, since you just recently published your piece. And it's up to you how much you want to divulge or not, because I'm assuming that is premium content. But I would recommend people get that subscription, because this is between what you and Joey do from the free podcast that you guys put out. Mondays, are we going to get Jay Lehman in the week? Okay.
We start on Monday. Can't wait to get Jay Lehman back. Latulippe will be back. We're going to get Isaac Trotter on there a lot more moving forward. And Kyle, I think anybody that listened to him in the last pod, Carp, I think ridiculously polished for a college senior. I'm sitting there going, like, you are way ahead of where I was entering this business, man.
I think that you comparing him to Isaac Trotter makes a lot of sense, because Isaac had polish like right away. But the offense, there's something that you've been talking about in the podcast that you put into words better than I could kind of put my thoughts together with it, was that I am excited for Luke Altmaier coming back, and who wouldn't be? That, to have a good quarterback and have a gamer like he is, especially late in games, is rare. And there was even a college football guy recently that put him above Drew Aller. And yes, I already have some biases against Penn State, and I think Drew Aller is the absolute most boring marquee quarterback that ever existed. But that goes with a lot of Penn State quarterbacks. But my excitement as we get closer to the season is more with the run game. And you've hit a little bit on the personnel that you could see with the 2 tight ends out there at the same time. You get the returning offensive line. Of course, this is based on health in the running back room. But all that said, if you told me that Khalil Valentine, because of injury, becomes a more prominent back, and you still got those blockers in front of him, I am sort of like you've talked about, getting very bullish on the fact that this could be a rushing offense that is the best one that Bielema has had so far at Illinois.
Yeah, Joey and I are going to do a bold predictions podcast next week because all respect to the Leathernecks, I don't think it's worth a deep preview into that game.
Fair.
So we'll talk more about the season. And I'm still formulating what I'm going to say about the rushing attack, but I think this could be the most efficient rushing attack he has. Maybe not the most rushing yards overall, Cart, because the first year or two, they really had to run the ball insanely a lot, like just because that's all they had. They really couldn't throw the ball down the field that well. But I think this rushing attack has a chance to be great. It starts with the offensive line. I think J.C. Davis is an NFL draft pick. I am super high on Melvin Priestley. I think he can take a big step forward and be all Big Ten, third plus guy. Josh Krutz and Josh Geske, third years as starters. They've been there all the time. And Brandon Henderson still has more to prove, but you feel good going into his second year. And they do have some developing depth. That Brandon Hanson, Desmond Schuster has been a surprise in camp. But I feel good about that offensive line when it's healthy, that they will pave the way. But you mentioned the tight ends. I know everyone's really excited about Cole Rusk and what he could add, and he is an exciting potential piece. But Tanner Arkin was one of the best blockers in the country at his position last year. He's still going to play a lot. But I'm telling you, Davin Stoffel and Christian Abney are going to make a big impact on this team because they can play 12 personnel again. And for the non-football-y people, that's 2 tight ends on the field at the same time, 2 wide receivers and a running back. That's what Illinois likes to run, and it allows you, when you have that many tight ends, to get really creative, Carp, especially in the passing game, play action, but it just makes you so big. And when you got guys who can get down the field and catch the ball, like Rusk or Davin Stoppel, I think Christian Abney has some interesting potential, but it just gives you so many more blockers and be able to be physical but dynamic. So I think it's going to open up some things for Barry Lundy, because last year it was Tanner Arkin, who's like 6'2.5", 260 pounds, and Carson Goda, who's like 6'1", 230. Like, he was your second tight end this year. Now you feel like you have 4 who can play, maybe 5 with Jordan Anderson being like an H-back. So I think that's just going to allow Barry Lundy to be more creative and just allow Illinois to be more powerful in the running game. And I think Aiden Lawfrey's ready to continue what he did late in last season. And if Caden Fagan can just stay healthy, which I do get concerned about because he's had 2 catastrophic injuries in his first 2 years. But his last 9 games, Carp, he's had like 600 yards rushing, 150 receiving. And that's mostly against Big Ten opponents. So if he stays on the field, he's going to be a very productive back. And then Khalil Valentine, I still got questions about his power, about his strength, but the speed is legit. So, and Luke Altmaier is a really good running quarterback. So I think the running game is going to be good. That alleviates a little bit of the questions I have with the receivers. And with the receivers, Carp, it's not a question of do they have capable guys who are going to be productive. It's do they have a guy who can do what Pat Bryant does. And I don't know if that's there yet. And I don't know if it will be there. But do they have a guy that can be Zachary Franklin would be great. And can that be Hudson Clement? Can you get 60% of what, Pat Bryant gave you with a Malik Elsey? Or Alex Kapka-Jones is not someone to overlook. But I do think Colin Dixon, Hank Beatty, you'll run through the slot a little bit more like you did with Isaiah Williams. So I do think the passing game is going to be productive with the quarterback, the coordinator, at least the depth of receivers you have. It's just a question of if you have to win games late like you did last year, I just don't know if you can count on that receiver to go crazy over everybody and do what Pat Bryant did.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The bowl game does make me feel a little bit better about it because I know Zachary Franklin played and scored a touchdown in the corner of the end zone. I think that was the second quarter touchdown for him. But, you take Hank Beatty's crossing pattern where he got absolutely rocked in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, it's things like that. And I'm glad you're beating the drum on Colin Dixon because I could not necessarily pinpoint 1, 2, 3 plays last year that made a light bulb go off and me say, I like this guy. But call it the look of him on the field, Call it his blocking downfield, of which he was a big part, I believe, on Pat Bryant's touchdown at Rutgers. His downfield block really helped spring him.
That's why he won't leave the field very much. He's a phenomenal blocker, but he's also kind of like a running back after the catch. He's not a burner. He's not the biggest guy, Carp. He's like 6'1", 215, 220. He's not this guy explosiveness, but you kind of can use him like a DJ Moore. He's not that explosive. I'm not saying he is. He's probably more like a 4'6" guy, but he's just got some versatility to him. And then you just don't have to take him off the field. So I keep saying this. I think you're going to have a lot of 4-catch, 50 to 60-yard performances out of Colin Dixon, and he's always going to be on the field. And he's just going to be so valuable. I do think Beatty's going to get a lot of snaps. Like, there's some people that think he's going to have a chance in the NFL between his return ability and then, just what you did with Isaiah Williams in that slot. You can get creative, get him some touches. And he showed last year that he can be a guy that Luke Altmaier trusts.
It seems like Bielema's really saying that name Hudson Clement a lot
more
last week. And I know that it's sometimes in trying to parse those words and figure out, well, what are they trying to get across? And knowing that Bielema, I've seen cagier football coaches than him.
Yeah.
But he's also a skilled guy with the press. So, I mean, when it comes to, okay, why is he continually say that? I would just imagine that you are probably going to see, and I want to get your thoughts on this, for the 3 starting guys that probably go out there for the first play. Colin Dixon, we can put that in pen, I'm pretty sure. And Hudson Clement would be the only other guy that I would use pen for. So who do you think then, if we're assuming Dixon in the slot and we're assuming Clement outside in one spot, who gets that first start in the other? Is it Elzy because he's been in the system?
I think I'll digress from you. I think you will see Dixon on the outside.
Okay.
And you will see Hank Beatty at slot.
Okay.
The other starter, which is usually the X position, which is what Pat Bryant played most of the time, though they can kind of change these positions. There's a lot of versatility between them, but the X is usually the guy opposite the tight end that's on the line of scrimmage. So usually you just don't have a lot of room to get explosiveness. So you either need the speed or most often the size to get by some people and kind of win those battles, hand-to-hand combat. Don't overlook Alexander Kapka-Jones. He's not sexy. He's 6'4", 195. He's not as strong as Malik Elzy. He's not as fast or as long as Justin Boak, who's a really interesting piece. But he's consistent. And Justin Stepp has said a lot here recently. Got to be able to have the trust of your quarterback. And we didn't see a lot of practice, but the one we did, Malik Elzy was out with a hamstring injury, which doesn't help him. And Kapka-Jones had the ball thrown to him a lot from Luke Altmaier. So it's just, if Altmaier has that trust, I think Kapka-Jones, don't be surprised if he's the first guy out there. I do think Clement is going to play a lot. I think him, Dixon, Beatty, at those 2 positions, the Z and the slot, they're going to rotate a lot. So when Beatty's in, Dixon's in. When Dixon's in, Beatty's out, then Hudson Clement is in. But we have heard more from him. I started to back off my hype around him. I really liked him as a prospect and thought he brought a lot given what he did at West Virginia. Just because the spring he was injured, you just didn't hear his name as often as Dixon and Beatty. And then we've heard more and more as training camp has gone on that he's settling in. And I got to catch up with Hudson and wrote a story about him. And he said it himself. Like it was hard early on. It's not like Zachary Franklin where you're just thrown into this team where 70% of the offense because you played with Barry Lunny. He had to learn new offense, new people, all of it. So it was a lot of new for him. And he just wasn't handed the job, which maybe he thought he would be when he got here. But you're starting to hear his name more. So I think those are going to be your 3 guys. Malik Elzy's the interesting one here because we have heard good things, positive things, but we haven't heard over the top, he's our guy, right? And I don't know if we were going to hear that because he's got to prove it in games. Carp, he looks the part. He's going to play because he can block. He's going to play because he can go up and catch the ball. But as we've seen in games, and in the spring game a couple years ago, can Luke Altmaier count on him to catch the ball when it is thrown to him? Can he win 65-35 of balls that are thrown up to him? I think he's just going to have to prove that. I think Kapka-Jones is going to have to prove that. I think Boak is. So I think that competition will continue into the season.
Is the offense going to be better? I know you use the word efficient, and I would agree with that. In terms of scoring output, do you think that this one will put more points more consistently than last year?
I think so, because I think the running game will be better. I don't think they're going to have to rely on the passing game as much as they have the last 2 years, to be honest with you. Like, these have not been up to Bret Bielema's standards when it comes to rushing attacks. I think we started to see that late last season. right? Like the Northwestern game was phenomenal, but South Carolina, you really wore them down late in the game with the rushing attack. And then this makes Luke Altmaier's life so much easier to where he doesn't have to play hero every game in the fourth quarter. So I think they will be more efficient because of that. I do think that they should improve. Like, I think there's a better overall, deeper group. It's not the most explosive though.
Yeah.
Right. Like outside of Aiden Lawfrey and maybe Khalil Valentine, like there's just not a lot of burners here. Now maybe Hank Beatty can have some of those plays and, maybe they find somebody else that can have some of those plays, but this is more skilled, win contested catches, win physical battles. I don't know how explosive it is once you get into the really good teams on your schedule, right? So the first couple, non-conference opponents outside of Duke, you might have some explosive plays, but that's what I don't know, where I do put a little bit of a ceiling on this group. But man, you got the quarterback, you got the coordinator, you got the offense, you got the offensive line, you have the running backs. So for me, I do think this offense can take another step forward. Is it straight points? I don't know, but I do think it's going to be a more efficient group.
I have a theory that I wanted to present to you and see what you think. So the offense, you said efficient. I would agree that they will be more efficient this year, partially due to the running game. And I think we would both agree that the defense is probably just objectively going to be better, or I should say more consistent, because to Aaron Henry's credit, in the biggest games last year, and I would say Kansas, Michigan in the bowl game, he answered the call as a coordinator and the defense answered the call as a unit. So I'm all encouraged by that. What I'm also encouraged by is the notion that maybe for an offense last year that, depending on the game, maybe wasn't the best with time of possession, which I don't know if you recall is one of my favorite stats. I love time of possession. I also love who scores first, but we'll see who does that.
Makes you feel better the rest of the way, right?
It does, yeah. Which, if I think about it, I don't know if Illinois had to play catch up in most of their wins last year. They seem to usually get the first score. Kansas might have been, well, they might have gotten the field.
Rutgers, they definitely had to catch up.
Yeah.
In that fourth quarter, they were down 9 points at one point.
And South Carolina, I think, scored first as well.
Yeah.
But regardless, my theory is that because the offense will have the ball longer, and you already are adding, I should say, bringing back so much depth on defense and these new pieces on the defensive line, which we'll talk about, that you will have a defense that not only has to be on the field less, but because of the bodies they can rotate in and out, that is going to lead to potentially more explosive plays from the defense, which they had a decent number of those last year, especially the secondary. I think that could maybe be across all three phases because they'll just be fresher, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on this defense and what it's capable of. I don't know if it's going to be, and it's not going to be, 2022 levels of dominance, no. Right? I'm not envisioning that. But you return one of the best pass rushers in the Big Ten in the country in Gabe Akis, and I think he's ready for another step forward. Whether that's a huge amount of sacks more or not, he's going to get a lot of attention. He's going to win a lot of battles. Linebacker, you feel way better about. And I don't want to overlook, like, the group had a ton of room for growth, even with a good finish to the year with, like, Malachi Hood and James Kreutz and Ryan Mead playing well. Like, getting Dylan Rosiak back is big. He's a playmaker. He forces fumbles. He's steady. But that secondary should be really, really good. Xavier Scott's really good. He won the Kansas game basically for you last year. Does he get as many picks? That's going to be hard for him to do, but he is very, very good. And he's an NFL player. Matthew Bailey's the guy I think can just shoot through the moon. I thought the last 6 or 7 games, he's one of the best players on your team. And outside of Gabe, I think he was the best defensive player he had over the back half of the season. I think he's ready to turn some of those plays where he got pass breakups and interceptions. And I just think he's ready for a huge lead. The NFL is very, very interested in him. I love the depth in your secondary. Your corners, I don't think are dominant, Carp, but I think they're serviceable or good. Linebackers, I think, are good. I think James Thompson's a star. I think he's going to be very, very good. I think Illinois is actually kind of hushed how excited they are about him. 6'6", 300 pounds, really disruptive. He's 23, 24 years old. Just the kind of guy you haven't had really up front, because Johnny was obviously as explosive as they came, but he's like, James Thompson's like 3 inches taller than Keith Randolph. So you think of that length they can bring up front. The rest of the defensive line, I still have questions about just the high end of the starters. Like Kurt Neal was a serviceable starter at Wisconsin last year. He's got to take a step forward. But you just kind of trust Terrence Jamison to get the most out of nose tackles at this point. And I think Angelo McComb's in for a big leap up, and they got some other options there. But Tommy Wadurajai is on his 4th school in 4 years. Pat Farrell's in the mix for that other starting spot. Alec Bryant at outside linebacker opposite of Gabe Akis, and Joe Barno will be working in there, Leon Lowry. All those guys still have to prove more. So I like the depth they're starting to get up front, Carp, which says to me you can rotate guys more. And when your second unit does come in on the defensive line, which it would for a series or two last year, you're not going to get manhandled, which they were last year. That second unit came in, there was sophomore, redshirt freshman. They got crushed last year. I don't think it's going to be as big of a drop-off, but they still got to prove to me that they can consistently stop the run, which contributed to that team not being great on third downs. They were bad on third down defense last year. And I think a lot of it had to do with first and second down, not being able to stop the run. So there's a really good, sound defense, smart defense, Carp, that keeps things in front of them. Not a lot of explosive plays over the top. Miles Scott has a lot to do with that. But can you just win more physically? You're not giving up 4, 5, 6 yards every play on the ground or every first or second down.
Do you chalk up last year and some of the not so great defensive performances? And I'm not even going to mention Purdue second half because whatever that was, we don't need to rehash it. But I'll even go
on a heater. That's what Ryan Walters calling both is just an amazing single game accomplishment, by the way.
Props to him for that. Legit. Take the Rutgers game. Large chunks of that, like, you take the lead or you tie it, I forget, and then immediately give up a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Take the Northwestern game, which that more than anything probably had me, even though I flew down to Orlando, was excited for the bowl game, I had no delusions about what that defense could do against an SEC offense. So do you chalk up that inconsistency and occasional bad defensive performance to a lack of depth? Do you, talent that's still raw? A coordinator is still figuring it out, which I wasn't very comfortable with the notion of coordinators learning on the job, though I get it to a certain extent. What do you chalk that up to? And do you think those things can be rectified this year?
Yeah, I think part of it was the lack of depth up front was a concern that I think continued to show itself early in the season, despite their success. I do think, Henry was still learning things last year, but they made some good hires last year. I mean, Corey Parker gets a lot of the fanfare because of the way he talks, man. He's such a great communicator. When you listen to his interviews, you want to get on the field and put your cleats on just like him and play. Archie McDaniel should not be overlooked. The way he used his linebackers and the way he kind of got involved, from what I understand, in their third down defensive packages just made Illinois a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And Henry's open to all those things. He wasn't like, no, this is my defense. I'm going to do this. So I thought just that the defensive staff, with the injuries they had late in the year at corner, at linebacker, they performed really, really well and put their guys in positions to succeed to the point where it was building and building. Like Michigan State was a really good defensive performance, like holding Aiden Childs to that game and, really forcing him to be a pocket passer. That won that game, and it really set up your offense to score a bunch of points. Northwestern, yeah, you gave up some points, but at the end of the day, like you were just kind of playing from ahead and just trying not to give up the big play. Mm-hmm. But the South Carolina game plan was phenomenal. Like making Lenora Sellers a pocket passer, Jalen Daniels in Kansas, they were great against those guys. It was the Ethan Kaliak-Manis one I can't understand. The Ryan Brown one I can't understand. So you are looking for a little bit smoother. Yeah, but I do think Aaron Henry learned a lot last year. So I don't know if it was a overly imposing group, right? I mean, Xavier Scott's a really good defensive back. I don't think he's nearly the athletic guy that Sidney Brown or Quan Martin were, but he's really smart. He's really instinctual. He's got tenacity as a player. Matthew Bailey's not as explosive as some of those guys, but he's big and physical. Gabe Akis obviously is a very impressive, imposing player, but T.Rod Edwards is undersized. Dennis Briggs kind of was undersized for his position. So it just wasn't a very imposing group. This group's bigger with James Thompson, Tommy Wadurjaye. They've added some other pieces. So I do think that it's just they're not as many athletic freaks, but they are getting faster. They are getting deeper, and that's what I'm excited about is because I do think once you get into late October and November and you have injuries like they had at some key positions last year, you're able to withstand those, which you weren't in 2023.
Real quick question before we do some final predictions here. If Illinois were to have a good season, do you see either coordinator being bandied about for head coaching opportunities? And if so, which one do you think might get some of that chatter first?
Yeah, if Illinois has the season they think and Luke Altmaier has the season you think, I think Barry Lundy is going to be very high on coaching lists. The question I have is who's coaching list? Is it a bottom rung Sunbelt team? I would argue Barry can do better than that in the future. So maybe he wants to be the coordinator for another year, maybe he gets a raise to $1.5 million as an offense coordinator. It's not a bad thing to just be career offense coordinator, but he does have head coaching ambitions. He was in the mix for some, FBS group of 5 level schools. I don't know if he's ever a serious candidate, but his alma mater could open up at Arkansas. And if they came calling, I would run to that if I were him, because it's just an opportunity. But the clock is ticking with Barry. He doesn't look it, but he's 50 years old, 51 years old. So it is time for him probably to do that. And, I think Bret Bielema is setting up, like a Mike New is a really interesting hire. Former Ball State head coach, was quarterbacks coach for Drew Brees, and good play caller. And you have Art Sikowski, who could be below him. So there's an interesting you could have that set up. Aaron Henry did get some looks from other schools as a defensive coordinator after last year. So that does tell you how he's kind of thought about, but Brett's keeping him. He could be $1 million coordinator right now. I would think Aaron needs some more time to prove himself at that. And I also think he has time. I think there's a little bit more urgency with Barry. Plus, 4 years into being an OC in the Big Ten at 51 years old, like, he's got the urgency, but I also think he'd be ready. I think he'd be ready to be a head coach. So Barry would be the one that I think is most likely to leave. But I also think you got some defensive staffers. Archie McDaniel could be a guy that could be a defensive coordinator candidate somewhere. Got some offensive staffers like Justin Stepp. Somebody might want to take him as an offensive coordinator if they're an offensive play caller. So there's other guys in the staff that they can lose, and that's what's important is you kind of have a plan. And Bret Bielema told us he's got some succession plans set up in his staff. So that's what makes me always think about that Mike New hire was really interesting.
I'm not trying to disparage Bruce Weber's coaching staff, but you want a coaching staff where your assistants are wanted by others. And Bill Self had that. It appears that Bret Bielema is certainly building something of a coaching tree of sorts. So you publish your predictions. I'll let you know straight off. I've run this scenario or simulations through my head a bunch of times, and I seem to land on 9-3 more consistently than any other record. And I'll tell you the games that are the reasons why I'm finding 3 losses within it. I think they lose at least one of the Duke Indiana USC games. Early in the season, you're still working some new pieces in, and they're good teams, 2 of which are on the road. Okay, yep. So I think there's one there. I think it's realistic to say that Ohio State is a loss. However, I'm going to go to the game and let it play out.
I wish you got them. I'd rather have them week 4 than week 7, right? Then I mean, they're going to be tested regardless because they play Texas. But I'd rather get Julian saying early in his season rather than later when he could be rolling.
And I see, though, I do feel better with the bye week before it. At Washington,
yes,
no matter what. It's just that is one of the toughest places to play in college football. They just don't get the praise it probably should as a home venue.
20 straight wins, second longest streak in the country behind only Georgia.
Though I don't buy their coach necessarily. However, it is a big year for him. Not exactly the warmest and fuzziest guy, it appears, on the planet.
Yeah, but I thought year one, obviously it was going to be a big drop off, all the talent they left. Sure. But he's a really smart offensive mind. They have talent. You mentioned just going to the West Coast. Until it's proven otherwise, Carp, it's really difficult. Whether it's West Coast teams coming here, USC was 0-3 on the road in the Big Ten, and so, one of them was to Maryland, right? So that travel, I don't know what exactly it is, but there is correlation right now with winning. When you got to travel that far, whether it's going west or coming east, it seems really difficult for some of these teams. You do have the off week before it. Brett is 6-1.
Yep.
After off weeks, including 5-1 in the Big Ten. So I'm so conflicted about that game. Illinois does have a more proven roster, a deeper roster, but they have talent. It's a tough place to play. And what puts me over the top is Ryan Walters is the defensive coordinator at Washington.
Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? We can't avoid this guy. And we probably won't play Washington again for another 3 years. So it's not like you'll even get a crack at revenge because he's on the reclamation tour here and then he'll be somewhere else. But so I look at those as obvious ones. I mean, talking with Trevor, maybe I think a Rutgers at home is not some beat them by 3 scores. I don't think that happens to a Greg Schiano Rutgers team.
Which is a huge kudos to Greg, right? That is just a tough team. It's never pretty, but that's what you should be in Jersey. And that's how you got to play. That's what you got to do as a program is, hey, we're going to be tough. We're going to be physical. We're going to try and be smart. It's kind of what you thought Bret Bielema would have to do here, but he's taking it maybe to another level. You got to do those things and make bowl games, and then maybe every once in a while we win 8 games. It's a phenomenal season. Our bad seasons are 4 or 5. Like, that's what Schiano's done, but you got to show up to play them.
Yeah, and that is a credit to him. So, yeah, I go 9-3 because I also think that, looking ahead of the schedule, I think that if Vegas were to – I know the over-unders right now are about 7.5. I think in some books, which I would tend to go over.
7.5, I would bet that number. 8.5, I would not.
I agree. It's a little too risky. But I think as the season plays out, I could see Illinois being favored in 9 of their games.
Yeah.
Maybe 8 if things don't go quite as great early. And my point is Bielema has been consistently terrific against the spread. So I don't fear underperformance all that much with this team with this depth. That's why I say 9-3 with a win that's going to be, whoa, that's a big win. Maybe at Indiana, for example, which I think is certainly possible. And then maybe that affords you the chance to lose a game that you shouldn't.
Yeah. That Duke game, of course, is big. That's a great test for your offense early on because Manny Diaz runs some fun stuff. Of course, he doesn't have the Penn State guys he had 2 years ago when they demolished Luke Altmaier in Illinois. But they have some guys on the defensive line in the secondary that are good. So I think your defense might need to carry you there. And they brought in a transfer quarterback who's really good, but I like getting him early. So I do think Illinois would be slightly maybe favored in that game, be close to a toss-up. They will be underdogs at Indiana.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if they're underdogs against USC.
Depends on what USC does the first few weeks. I think if Illinois gets one of the road wins, then they would be favored by about 3.5, something like that.
But you know what I mean? It's going to be a really close spread in that one, and that's not a gimme. So, man, if you get to 4-1, you feel really good.
100%.
Because then Ohio State, like, as long as you take care of business against Purdue, which I think you will. Kudos to Barry Odom for bringing in 80 players, but that's going to be a tough job for the next couple of years. But he was just brought in to be okay, to be competitive. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. But like Ohio State, you have just play with money. Like just go out there, play free. And then you go in the back end of that schedule. And man, there's so many opportunities for wins because Maryland's not very good. And Mike Locksley feels like a make or break year. Wisconsin, I think could be, I looked it up, Carp. Let me find.
As you're looking that up, I don't think I think Luke Fickell might not even be there by the time you play Wisconsin.
I think he might be because of the money he's making. But it feels like he coached the next year, just everyone knowing he might be fired. They could be better this year and lose more games because right before Illinois, there's 6 games, Carper, home against Michigan or at Michigan, home against Iowa, home against Ohio State, at Oregon, home against Washington, at Indiana.
They could lose all 6.
That's a team that might be ready for the end of their season when you go up to Madison.
This is a situation, Jeremy, where I'm glad you played them late.
Yes. And I feel the same way about Maryland, by the way. Rutgers, I think, will still be, a physical, tough game. And I have questions about Northwestern. And are they really going to move into that stadium with David Braun is their coach, a guy I respect, but I don't see them winning more than 4 games this year. And where's that program going in the NIL transfer portal era? I just don't see them having the talent to compete with a lot of teams in the Big Ten. So it sets up so well. You just got to get there. The end of September is so important to set you up for November.
Are you feeling, well, you don't need to give your record.
People, you can go to the site and see where I land. I've been between 8 and 9 the entire time.
Yeah.
Maybe part of that is I got excited about what they did in 2022 and thought it would carry over to 2003 and kind of overlooked the brain drain, the talent drain. They haven't had that a lot though this year. So I do feel optimistic about this team, but optimism can still be 8 or 9 wins for me. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to set the expectation higher, but I just think the Big Ten is hard. Just because you won 10 games last year and won 4 straight to end the year, like there was a hard point of that season, Carp, where it looked like it wasn't going to go great. 2003 looked like it could have gone worse if you would have lost to Indiana. 2022, you lost 4 straight to end the year. So it's just really hard to win Big Ten game after Big Ten game in this league where there's so much money and so much talent and so many good coaches that I still think that would be a good one. But I would go over the 7.5. There's no doubt about that with me because I keep going back to all my doubts or trepidations you have about the past, about the schedule, all those things. You got a quarterback who's one of the best in the Big Ten. And I could make the argument that he's a better college quarterback than Drew Aller. I think Drew is supremely talented, but I think Luke is clutcher than he is, despite him getting as far as the college football playoff semifinal last year. I also think the offensive line is really, really good. I think the defense is solid at worst. And I think this coaching staff is really good. So when you have those things, I'm just going to side on being a little bit more optimistic than not.
Final question I have for you begins with a bit of a vision, if you will. December 13th, thereabouts. It's a cold but mild for the time of year Friday evening in Champaign. And all the national crews are in town. Illinois is hosting a college football playoff game against, I don't know, Arizona State, something like that.
Yeah.
Would you, in all the games that you've covered for football and basketball in Illinois, would that be the biggest single game that you will have been able to cover if that were to happen?
I'm seeing they're hesitating. Yes. Yeah, it would be. Because as much as this town loves college basketball, they've never had, at least in our lifetimes, an NCAA tournament game in Champaign, right? Like in our lifetimes. I know in the past they could have. They've never had that. So have Bret Bielema with a chance to get to, what would that be? It'd probably be the quarterfinal if you won that game.
Yeah.
To lead you on campus to a victory, to take you farther in the college football playoff for Illinois freaking football. Yeah. Yeah. Like the Elite Eight game was a big game. The Sweet 16 game a couple years ago was a really big game. But nothing would compare to that. Obviously 0-1 didn't go as far as I thought they could have gone. If it was a Final Four game versus, this, but I've only covered an Elite Eight game and they lost by 30 something points. So yeah, that would be the biggest game I would have ever covered, because I never thought that would have been possible. One, because we never thought a college football playoff game on campus could be a thing when I started this, but also just because Illinois football, you never dreamed it would really kind of be in that discussion. And now there are reasons to think that this could be one of those years where if everything goes right, you could do that.
Is that Illinois Iowa State Sweet 16 game, is that probably at the top of your list?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrence Shannon's steal. I've said this many times.
Oh, I get it.
It literally took my breath away. It's just because it's a close game, phenomenal second half, and it's just like such a defensive battle, and you just didn't know if that Illinois team could win that way. And Terrence Shannon gets that steal, and I don't even remember Coleman Hawkins diving for the losing
kamikaze diving,
which was not. It was so Coleman.
Oh yeah,
that play just took my breath away because it was just such a big moment. I mean, you don't have to be an Illinois fan, or you can be an objective reporter like me and just enjoy that moment and just be taken aback by it, because it was such a big moment and such a big atmosphere and such a big game for such a great run by an individual player that felt like the culmination of it all for Terrence, for that team, and for the program, to be honest with you. So that moment's kind of like the one I always remember, even though there was some football moments, like covering the Wisconsin win 2019 and covering the Michigan State win that year. Like there were some improbable comebacks, and the Pat Bryant play last year with Luke, and Luke doesn't get enough credit for that play because he just took an absolute shot. That one was pretty close to one of the best moments I've ever covered. But that Terrence play was probably that. But college football playoff, man, no, that'd easily be the biggest thing I'd ever cover.
Nice place to be as we enter the 2025 season, where last year that football team gave plenty of moments. In fact, I will let you know, out of 2001, 2007, those were great years, big bowl games. I know those didn't end well. I think top to bottom, consistently, last year was my favorite experiences as an Illini football fan, because when I was able to reflect on it, there felt like there was a sustainable thing in place. Whereas 2001, Kittner, gone. 2007, we all still knew it was Ron Zook. I mean, we liked the guy, but it was Ron Zook.
And Richard, Richard was gone, and that was, you still thought it'd be better than 5. That's the thing. You can't go back to 5.
No.
Like you can't, and I don't think it will. Like that's my biggest thing. I sit here and go, if Luke Altmaier is healthy, this team should win 7+ games. Even if things don't go exactly according to plan, they should. Even if Ethan Hampton had to come in, I think they're a bowl team. I think there's enough there to be a bowl team. But that's what you want to take out, is just that drop off. Because maybe last year, Carp, is one of the most special years. you see. But as long as you're in that mix to give you a chance to have those kind of years, that's what you want moving forward, because it can be the unexpected years where you have those. And last year certainly was unexpected.
That's all I need for my Saturday mornings on Lot 31. That's all I need. Jeremy, of course, Illini fans know this. They can find you, Illini Inquirer podcast, IlliniInquirer.com. You and Joey will be covering all season. You got Kyle. Is he more basketball, or will he be helping out?
He'll focus mostly on basketball. Probably get his football predictions in there, but he's going to focus on basketball. We got Saeed Bravo, another Illinois senior that's going to help us out with some volleyball, women's basketball. He's going to help us with football as well. So happy to get some young blood in here, Carp.
Excellent. I appreciate it. I tell you what, I will remove you from the stage. I'll finish up with sponsors and all that, but I appreciate your time today. And maybe sometime this season I'll see you around. And we'll get you down for my class sometime too. We'll figure out our schedules.
We'll do. Thanks, Carp.
All right. Appreciate it, Jeremy. That is, of course, Jeremy Werner. You guys don't need any introduction to him, but appreciate him taking some time on the Saturday. He emailed me this morning, or I guess it was yesterday evening. So I shoot him an email at 7:30 and say, hey, how's one? And there you go. Hello to everybody watching today. Looks like we got about 225 out there. Before you head out, if you could like or subscribe or both to this video wherever you are watching us. I know on YouTube, you can just hit that subscribe button and like right next to each other. We will be back Monday evening with Lante for one final season preview, and then it's time to play the games. How about that? So it was great to talk with Jeremy, Trevor before that, Isaac Ambrose before that. We're doing all the guys that I've had the pleasure of working with, and now we get a really fun team to talk about. Gregory, I appreciate the comment there on YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in, and all of you as well. So before I go, just real quick, want to hit up the sponsors, which, of course, if you want to support us, support our sponsors. And I'll start with Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Steak, seafood, and spirits, whether it's a pre-game meal or a date night with your significant other, Hamilton Walkers is, for my money, the best place to get food and drink. Their signature old-fashioned, by the way. Get it. It's amazing. Hamilton Walkers. State Farm agent Brian Hansen. BrianIsMyGuy.com. Brian's a huge fan. He'll be in Lot 31 all season, I'm sure. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at BrianIsMyGuy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728 and get that furnace check. This week is going to be amazing. We're going to finally get that chill in the air that you get when fall hits. Before you know it, we'll be getting into the low 40s and the upper 30s. You want the furnace operating at its best, and that's what Dogtown has done for us at our house and can do for you as well. And Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online and get a quote while you're there, a free quote at owenbuildersllc.com. For Champagne Showers Podcast Network, and for all of you listening, watching, wherever you may be, it's nice that we have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube all at once to get out to as many people. But hey, on a Saturday afternoon, thank you all for taking some time with me and Jeremy, and we'll be back Monday night at 7 o'clock with the one and only, the incomparable Lante. Until then, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon. It is the 200 level.